He whispered once beneath the dim candlelight, "I feel alive only when I paint." The rain outside slammed against glass, echoing the chaos already living inside him. He stared at his trembling hands, brush dripping yellow, the color of fragile hope. He painted light while drowning in darkness, yet no one saw the fire. They called him mad, cursed, lost, but never called him by his true name, genius. He lived in rooms where silence screamed louder than any crowd could ever roar. The candle beside him flickered, as if afraid of what it might reveal next. He had nothing. No fame, no comfort, not even the mercy of his own mind. But he had color, wild, desperate color, the only language that ever understood him. Each stroke of paint was a confession, each canvas a diary of unspoken grief. He once wrote to his brother Theo, "A fire is burning inside me unseen." People passed by his pain like strangers ignoring a beggar on a quiet street. They saw smoke, not flame, madness, not meaning, despair, not divine creation in disguise. Theo alone stood near the blaze, his heart burning with helpless love and faith. The world looked away, blind to brilliance too raw, too painful to comprehend. He painted heaven, but the world preferred its own gray clouds of judgment. In hunger, he found color. In poverty, he found devotion. In loneliness, he found God. When food was gone, he fed on beauty, painting until his fingers stiffened in pain. He saw angels in wheat fields, eternity in stars, redemption in every wound and shadow. He sold only one painting, traded for barely enough bread to silence his stomach. But his hunger wasn't for food. It was for understanding, for someone to truly see. They locked him in white rooms, whispering about his madness as he dreamed in yellow. They named him broken. He named himself free, free to bleed meaning into the world. His heart spoke in colors no doctor could ever diagnose or explain with pity. When others saw crops, he saw sunlight fighting for life, gold against inevitable decay. When others saw night, he saw God breathing across the sky in trembling light. When others saw pain, he painted it until it became beautiful enough to forgive. He was never insane, just a soul too sensitive for a cruel world. And then came the night of crimson and shame, the story the world never forgets. He met her, a woman of the red street, weary, hardened, hollow from survival. She had no love left to give. He had too much to hold inside. He offered her his ear, not as madness, but as the purest language of devotion. Blood spilled like paint across the floor, red meeting red, love misunderstood and wasted. She screamed, threw it back, hatred in her eyes where he sought only tenderness and warmth. He never knew she wanted coins, not sacrifice, comfort, not truth, flesh, not feeling divine. He gave his ear to love, but love demanded something far less holy, money. Charles Bocuse would later write, "She wanted money, not ears." But Vincent never learned the cold currency of human affection. He paid with himself. Every heartbreak became pigment. Every humiliation, another brushstroke on the edge of eternity. He fell in love with the sun, its merciless truth, its unbearable honesty, its purity. Day after day, he stood beneath it, burning as he painted life itself alive. He wanted to trap light inside paint, to make God stay just a moment longer. The heat blistered his skin, but his spirit glowed brighter than any summer sky. He spent his life chasing the sun, and died when he finally caught it. After a year of torment and beauty, his masterpiece was born in golden silence. He stared at it for hours, smiling, trembling, whispering, "Now I understand creation." Then quietly, almost peacefully, he picked up the gun, his brush for the final time. The shot echoed across the empty fields, a sound that made eternity weep unseen. He fell among the wheat, the same gold he once painted with trembling hands of hope. But death was unkind. The bullet missed his heart, finding a home in his spine. For 36 hours, he suffered, half in this world, half already walking toward the next. Theo came running, breathless, eyes wide with helpless love and unbearable recognition of truth. Vincent's voice cracked. "Brother, I want to live. I want to go home. But I can't." Tears rolled down Theo's face as Vincent whispered again, "This sadness inside me won't end." And those final words became the echo that history still cannot silence or forget. His last painting wasn't on canvas. It was the silence between his dying breaths. The candle finally died. The room grew dark. But the colors on his walls still glowed. When the world awoke, he was gone, and suddenly, his madness became their miracle. The same critics who mocked him now worshipped his name in golden-framed museums. Paintings once rejected for pennies now sold for millions, each a relic of pure sorrow. But no amount of gold can buy the pain that birthed those colors of eternity. Every sunflower still trembles with loneliness. Every star in his night still screams his ache. And across time, his final words whisper softly, "The sadness will last forever." He lived unseen, died unloved, yet painted beauty the world wasn't worthy to feel. Now, each painting is a heartbeat, each color a cry, each canvas a resurrection. Vincent van Gogh didn't just paint. He burned, he bled, he loved through every hue. And though he is gone, the fire he carried still lights the souls of the lost. Night fell differently for Vincent, not darkness, but a living thing that whispered secrets softly. He called it the blue silence, a voice that spoke when the world turned away. Each letter to Theo was a confession disguised as conversation, a trembling bridge to sanity. He wrote, "I feel my mind slipping, brother, but my soul is still awake." The paper trembled under his ink, each word bleeding like veins of quiet desperation. Theo's replies came filled with hope, money, and love, but never enough to save him. Vincent read them beneath candlelight, smiling faintly, whispering, "He still believes in the broken." He painted to stay alive, but every brushstroke pulled him closer to death. Days melted into nights without meaning. Time itself blurred between the frames of his paintings. Inside the asylum walls, he found both prison and church, both torment and strange sanctuary. He told the doctors, "If I cannot live among people, let me live among colors." They gave him paint, thinking it was therapy, not realizing they were handing him his eternity. He stared out from the barred window, the moon dripping silver over a sleeping village below. He said softly, "Even in madness, God leaves me a view worth painting." His hands shook, his eyes burned, yet something divine moved through that fragile frame of flesh. He was locked away from the world, yet closer to heaven than anyone outside. The night became his companion, the stars his only friends that never judged or lied. He painted them not as they were, but as they felt, alive, breathing, infinite. Swirls of yellow danced through indigo skies, galaxies twining like angels caught mid-prayer. He wasn't painting stars. He was painting faith itself, the architecture of unseen mercy. They would later call it Starry Night, a masterpiece born from a mind unraveling gracefully. But for him, it was no triumph, no revelation, just another cry in blue. He said, "When I look at the stars, I dream of eternity. When I wake, despair returns." He saw God in the sky, and the absence of him when morning came. The nurses watched him wander the courtyard at dawn, speaking to the wind like an old friend. He touched the stone walls gently, whispering to them as if they might whisper back. To most, he was a madman sketching shadows. To him, the shadows were full of truth. He wrote, "Sadness follows me, but she is loyal. She has never once left." The doctor once asked, "Why paint such storms, such agony?" Vincent smiled, "Because I see them inside." Every thundercloud on canvas was a self-portrait, each streak of lightning another thought of despair. He painted his own mind, violent, radiant, endlessly reaching for something it could never touch. His illness wasn't madness. It was the unbearable ability to see everything too clearly. Letters piled by his bedside, words and sketches mixed with the smell of turpentine and tears. He wrote, "Perhaps my art is not to please the living, but to comfort the dead." Theo's love was his last tether to the world. Without it, even color might fade away. But poverty pressed harder, critics sneered louder, and his body began to betray his will. Still, he painted. Because what else was there, except the brief miracle of creation itself? He said, "If my suffering creates beauty, then let me suffer until beauty is born." Every morning, he rose before the sun, chasing light like a pilgrim chasing his God. He painted not to escape pain, but to prove pain could be beautiful. On his easel hung Wheatfield with crows, black birds scattering across yellow like omens in flight. He whispered, "They are my thoughts leaving me, one by one, into the endless sky." The fields stretched beyond the window, alive, golden, trembling under the weight of his goodbye. Each brushstroke grew slower, heavier, as if the world itself resisted being left behind. Theo visited one last time, voice gentle, eyes drowning in unspoken knowing and heartbreak. He held Vincent's hand, whispering, "One day, brother, they'll understand." Vincent smiled faintly, tears glistening. Perhaps understanding is only born when beauty and sorrow become one. He never painted for applause. He painted so his pain wouldn't die forgotten. At night, he returned to the window, the stars pulsing like hearts in the sky's chest. He pressed his forehead against the cold glass, whispering, "If I could, I'd live there." The silence around him wasn't empty. It hummed, filled with ghosts of colors yet unborn. And in that quiet, the universe whispered back, "You already do." The asylum walls could not contain the immensity of what he carried inside. Each morning, he rose to face himself again. The one enemy he could never conquer. His madness was mercy, his sorrow the muse, his loneliness the ink of immortality. He bled beauty, and the world took decades to notice the color of his wounds. He looked at the stars one last time and whispered, "They finally look like peace." But peace never came. Only the slow fade of candlelight and the echo of eternity. His letters stopped arriving, his brushes dried, yet his colors never died. Because somewhere beneath every star we see tonight, Vincent is still painting the sky. Morning light fell pale upon his room, yet nothing inside him answered anymore. The colors on his palette dried overnight, turning to dust like forgotten prayers. His hands shook as he reached for the brush, uncertain if creation still wanted him. He whispered, "Perhaps God has already taken the sky back from me." When genius begins to fear its own gift, destiny starts to close its door. Letters from Theo arrived slower now, words heavy with worry disguised as tender affection. Money was scarce, but love still came folded in every trembling piece of paper. Vincent read them in silence, the ink blurring where his tears refused to hide. He wrote back with a shaky pen, "Brother, I feel a storm forming inside my soul." The world outside had grown loud again, but his heart only heard thunder. Each breath felt like paint thinned too much, transparent, fragile, ready to vanish. He painted storms on canvas because he couldn't stop the ones inside himself. At dusk, he walked alone through the fields, the wheat whispering secrets in the wind. Crows gathered above him, circling like black prayers that had forgotten their heaven. He raised his eyes and murmured, "You know me, don't you? You always did." The birds answered in silence, wings slicing the air like pages of an unfinished gospel. He saw in them his thoughts, restless, wounded, desperate to escape the body's cage. Back in his room, he began to paint, faster, harder, as if racing time. Yellow screamed against black. The sky burned like grief. The earth bent beneath invisible weight. Every brushstroke was a heartbeat. Every crow, another thought flying away forever. He barely slept. He barely ate. The fire had turned from warmth to consuming flame. He wrote again to Theo. "I feel my mind tearing like a canvas under too much color." Theo read the letter at night, the candle flickering as if in mourning already. He pressed it to his chest, whispering, "Hold on, Vincent, please, hold on." But distance is a cruel thief. Love cannot travel faster than despair. Vincent's days became shorter. The evenings stretched long with whispers of unfinished confessions. He stared at Wheatfield with crows, trembling, sensing it might be his last true breath. He didn't plan his farewell. He painted it instead, line by trembling line. The villagers whispered that the painter wandered fields speaking to ghosts and shadows. Children pointed, men laughed, women closed shutters as he passed with haunted eyes. He smiled faintly, not in anger, not in sorrow, but in exhausted understanding. He once told Theo, "They mock because they see themselves without masks, and it frightens them." That evening the sun bled red into the fields, setting the world aflame with mercy. Vincent stood beneath it, the same light he'd worshipped, now burning as a final benediction. He whispered, "If beauty demands pain, then let me pay completely." He believed some debts could only be settled in silence under a crimson sky. Theo felt it from miles away, the tightening of air, the quiet before ruin. A final letter arrived, words uneven, sentences fading into sudden empty spaces. "Perhaps my life has served its purpose. The wheat is golden enough without me." Theo read it again and again, the world tilting, the sound of rain like knives. He ran through Paris streets clutching the letter, screaming his brother's name to strangers. But the storm had already broken elsewhere. A single gunshot echoing through yellow fields. Vincent fell among the stalks he'd painted, the earth catching him like an unfinished prayer. He died where he painted life, in the same field, under the same sky. The crows rose suddenly, black clouds twisting, scattering across the horizon like fleeing memories. The gun lay beside him, small, almost ashamed of the act it had committed. For 2 days he lingered, whispering to Theo, "I want to live. I truly do." Theo held him, tears falling onto blood-stained wheat, saying, "Then live, brother. Just breathe." But breath became silence, and silence became legend, and legend became the world's delayed apology. He left color where others left ashes, pain where others left emptiness. Theo buried him beneath the same field, a single sunflower placed upon the grave. Years later, the world would call it sacred ground, the birthplace of immortal sorrow. Now every crow that crosses a golden horizon carries his unfinished prayer through time. Every museum light that shines on his work is another candle for forgiveness. He was not insane. He was divine, too human for this world, too bright to remain. And in the silence after the gunshot, the stars themselves began to paint for him. The day Vincent died, the sky dimmed as if the sun refused to rise again. Theo sat beside his brother's body, tracing each paint-stained finger like a sacred relic. The room smelled of turpentine, blood, and fading sunflowers wilting in silent devotion. He whispered, "You were never mad, Vincent. Only misunderstood by those too afraid to feel. Some souls are too vast for one lifetime, too fragile for the noise of men." Theo's hands trembled as he wrote the obituary, words collapsing under unbearable tenderness. He sent letters to friends, to patrons, to anyone who'd ever glimpsed Vincent's fire. But the replies came slow, indifferent, polite. A pity. He was quite talented. The world still painted him as a madman who danced with ghosts and delusion. Yet Theo knew. Those ghosts were angels, and the delusion was simply unbearable truth. Each night he sat before Starry Night, whispering, "Do you see him there? Still alive?" He searched the canvas for his brother's pulse, and found it glowing in the stars. Months passed, and Theo's health broke like glass under the weight of mourning. He stopped eating. He stopped sleeping. He began writing letters to Vincent again. "Brother, they don't understand. I tried to tell them. The sadness will last forever." His voice cracked like dry paper, his eyes hollow yet burning with devotion. He carried Vincent's paintings from one gallery to another, begging for their acceptance. Most laughed, some pitied. A few paused, not for art, but for the ache within. Still, he persisted, as if carrying divine fire through the cold corridors of indifference. Even after death, Vincent painted through Theo's hands, through his grief, through his fight. Theo's wife, Johanna, watched helplessly as the man she loved dissolved in sorrow's smoke. He'd sit by the window whispering to ghosts, "He's not gone. He's just ahead." Within 6 months, his lungs failed, his voice faded, and his heart followed Vincent's footsteps. They buried him beside his brother, 2 graves under the same eternal patch of sky. The wind carried sunflower petals across the field, golden like their unspoken farewell. 2 brothers, one promise, that love would outlast madness, time, and every cruel misjudgment. Years turned to decades, and the world began to wake from its long blindness. Art critics dug through dust and shame to find the letters Theo preserved in tears. "I dream about my paintings, and then I paint my dreams." Words that shook the quiet world. Suddenly, Vincent's name echoed through museums, salons, and universities, whispered by trembling curators. Paintings once mocked were now guarded like scripture, their brushstrokes studied like holy verses. The same world that mocked him now bowed before his torment, calling it genius. But there was no triumph left to witness, only silence beneath 2 weathered stones. Tourists came and wept without understanding why. Children asked, "Why do the colors hurt so much?" Because every stroke carried blood. Every hue was born from heartbreak and divine exhaustion. He gave the world beauty not to impress, but to survive the unbearable ache of living. In the Starry Night, you can still hear his heartbeat if you listen between the stars. In sunflowers, his hope still breathes, fragile, trembling, but somehow still reaching for the light. In Wheatfield with crows, his final breath circles endlessly, reminding us that pain paints eternity. He died believing no one would remember. Yet his sorrow became humanity's mirror. Johanna, years later, opened his letters for publication, her hands shaking like prayer candles. She wrote, "He was not mad. He simply felt too deeply for a shallow world." Those letters spread across Europe, whispered in art schools, and were read in trembling awe. A generation of painters cried while reading them, realizing pain could indeed create something eternal. The irony was cruel and divine. The man who starved for color now fed the world. His name became a hymn, his face a wound carved into time's reluctant mercy. He was no longer a man. He was emotion made immortal, grief made divine. When they placed Starry Night in the museum, the curator whispered, "The room feels alive." Visitors stood in silence, some smiling, most weeping, none leaving untouched. Each star pulsed like a heartbeat, as if Vincent himself stood behind the glass, breathing. He had wanted warmth. He found it centuries too late, but still, he found it. And in every gallery shadow, his voice seems to whisper, "I told you sadness lasts forever." But perhaps sadness was not a curse. Perhaps it was the proof of love's endurance. Theo's letters remain beside his, 2 souls speaking through ink, bound beyond death's division. They both died unknown, but together they birthed a religion, worship of beauty through pain. Now every painter, every dreamer, every lonely soul carries a spark of Vincent's fire. He walks beside them in every color mixed, every sky painted, every sorrow survived. The man who burned beneath the sun still lights the nights of the broken-hearted. He once said, "I feel that there is nothing more truly artistic than to love." That love became his signature, not in galleries, but in the pulse of humanity itself. And if you ever stand before Starry Night, don't just look, listen. Listen to the silence that isn't silence, to the ache that hums beneath the blue. That's him. Still painting, still feeling, still whispering to anyone who dares to understand. He is not gone. He merely changed mediums, from canvas to eternity. Because in the end, art is not made to be understood. It is made to survive. And Vincent did, through tears, through madness, through death, through the colors that outlived sorrow. So when you see his stars, remember, those lights are not suns, they are souls. And one of them is his, still burning, still beautiful, still whispering, "The sadness will last forever." Somewhere tonight, in a quiet attic, a lonely painter stares at an empty canvas. The moonlight spills across his face like a fragile blessing from a forgotten saint. His brush trembles, his heart breaks, and yet he paints, because silence hurts more. Every artist begins where Vincent ended, between madness, hope, and the edge of faith. He doesn't know why the stars comfort him more than people ever could. He doesn't know why the color yellow makes him both ache and believe again. But Vincent knew. He always knew. The sun was his confessional, light his prayer. And through time's great corridor, that same golden ache reaches every broken dreamer's hands. Museums now whisper his name like scripture, yet the real cathedral is the human heart. Children copy sunflowers in classrooms, not knowing they're holding the remnants of a wounded soul. Lovers write letters under starry skies, quoting him without realizing the blood behind the beauty. His words became language for the lost, his colors, the anthem for the unseen. In a hospital ward, a young woman fighting depression sketches irises on her notebook. She doesn't speak much, but every line she draws carries something Vincent once felt. A nurse stops, looks, smiles, and whispers, "That's beautiful." The girl finally smiles back. Somewhere, perhaps in another realm, Vincent smiles too. Quiet, grateful, still painting in spirit. There is no grave deep enough for a heart that still beats in colors. Every time sorrow meets courage, his ghost wakes, not to haunt, but to heal. He is every trembling hand that dares to create in defiance of despair. He is the whisper between brushstrokes, the pulse between the broken and the divine. Art students in Paris leave sunflowers on his grave, rain mixing with their tears. They read his letters aloud, trembling, as if calling out to a lost father. "Dear Theo, my sadness will last forever." One boy closes his eyes, whispering, "Mine too." But when he opens them again, the colors of dawn seem a little brighter. Vincent's sadness did last, but it also became something else, a map for survival. Pain, when shared through creation, transforms into a bridge, connecting the shattered to the shining. He didn't die to end suffering. He died to teach the world how to feel. And centuries later, humanity is still learning, still trembling, still trying to paint its ache. In Tokyo, a digital exhibition of Starry Night projects across 50,000 screens. Crowds stand silent, phones lowered, eyes wide, modern souls humbled by ancient sorrow. A boy asks his mother, "Why is it so sad and beautiful at the same time?" She answers softly, "Because he saw what we all see, but dared to feel it." Meanwhile, scholars write endlessly about his madness, his brushwork, his revolutionary use of light. But none can explain why a single sunflower can make strangers cry in unison. It isn't technique, it's confession. Every painting is a suicide note that refused to die. His art outlasted the mind that broke creating it, turning agony into eternal oxygen. The sadness didn't vanish. It evolved, scattered through millions of kindred spirits across generations. Every artist who bleeds for beauty carries a shard of his shattered halo. Every person who endures quietly has walked through the same night Vincent once painted. We are all, in some way, survivors of the same beautiful ache. The girl who paints in her therapy group, the writer fighting silence with trembling words, the old man restored color to faded murals, whispering to himself, "Don't give up." They are Vincent's children, born from his pain, raised by his perseverance, lit by his madness. And every time they choose creation over despair, another star flickers brighter in his sky. Theo's descendants still visit the graves, leaving brushes dipped in yellow at dawn. Johanna's published letters sit in libraries, their pages smelling faintly of turpentine and tears. The story never ended. It only changed form, from tragedy to testimony to transcendence. Vincent's name no longer means failure. It means faith in feeling, faith in imperfection. Once, he begged for warmth. Now the entire world gathers around his eternal fire. Once, they mocked his madness. Now they quote it as wisdom for the broken-hearted. Once, he died alone. Now millions whisper his name in reverence every single day. He painted loneliness so truthfully that no one ever feels alone seeing it again. If he could see the world now, the museums, the documentaries, the tears, he would smile gently and say, "So it was worth it, after all." Because the sadness that once consumed him became a shared language of the living. And through that language, Vincent van Gogh achieved what no other soul could: immortality. Not the kind carved in marble or written in history books, but something far deeper. Immortality that lives in heartbeats, in brushstrokes, in the courage to keep feeling. He taught us the highest form of art, to suffer beautifully and still believe, to see pain not as punishment, but as proof that we are still alive. So if someday you feel the world too heavy, the silence too loud, remember this: there was once a man who saw beauty in pain and turned it into light. Stand beneath his starry night, let your sadness breathe, let your hope rise with every star. Because Vincent's gift was never his art. It was permission to feel without shame. And when the night feels endless, when despair whispers your name like an old friend, look up. The stars still burn because he once believed they could. You are not alone. You never were. You never will be. Because somewhere in eternity, Vincent is still painting, and the sky is still listening. He lives not in museums, but in moments when sorrow becomes something strangely beautiful. He is the echo of every trembling heart that chooses color instead of silence. He is proof that even broken souls can illuminate the world beyond their own despair. And so the man who once said, "The sadness will last forever," became its greatest cure. Every century remembers him differently, yet all remember the same ache beneath the brilliance. In his madness, the world saw insanity. In his colors, eternity saw divine comprehension. Time did not forgive him. It only learned to kneel before his suffering. Every museum light trembles slightly, as if still afraid to reveal the depth of his pain. Critics speak of technique, of brushwork, of evolution, but forget the trembling man behind them. They write dissertations while his ghost lingers, whispering, "I never painted art, only my heart." His letters, now preserved behind glass, still hum like living veins beneath the fragile paper. Theo's ink bleeds beside them. Two brothers speaking across time, death, and unfinished dreams. Some nights, curators swear they hear faint sobbing inside the bedroom at Arla's. They say the walls breathe softly, as if waiting for someone who will never return. Even the paint remembers his loneliness. Even silence bends under his unending sadness. Visitors pause before each canvas, unable to explain the grief that enters their bones. Some cry quietly, without knowing why. Others smile through tears, whispering, "He must have understood me." Because every color Vincent touched became a universal language, sorrow translated into radiance and faith. His yellows became sunlight for the blind, his blues, oceans for those drowning unseen. He turned anguish into worship, turning despair into color, and color into resurrection. No tragedy remains unpainted now. No despair unspoken since he dared to expose it all. Pain once hidden behind polite smiles now spills honestly through brush, melody, and verse. Every poet, every filmmaker, every singer who trembles beneath their own sadness owes him something. Because Vincent broke first, so the rest of us could learn how to survive breaking too. A young man in Amsterdam visits his grave, whispering, "I'm lost, like you once were." He leaves behind a small canvas of his own, imperfect, trembling, definitely alive. Rain falls softly. The grave absorbs it like a blessing, paint and tears mixing silently. In that moment, 2 centuries touch, grief recognizing itself in a stranger's courage. Every brush dipped in color now carries fragments of his stubborn, luminous rebellion. Each time someone chooses art instead of destruction, Vincent's pulse beats again beneath their hands. And so his death was never an ending, only the beginning of a grand inheritance. He didn't give the world answers. He gave it permission to keep asking through beauty. Even the stars feel heavier now, as if aware of the sadness they've inherited. Every night the sky painted after him carries faint echoes of his trembling constellation. He didn't paint the heavens. He confessed to them, and they never stopped listening. The world no longer pities him. It prays through him, quietly, reverently, endlessly. In classrooms, teachers whisper his quotes like mantras. What would life be without courage? Children, too young to know sorrow, still sense the truth hidden in those trembling words. They color outside the lines, smile shyly, and say, "Maybe Vincent would have liked this." And in that small act of creation, a century of despair suddenly feels redeemed. Somewhere, an artist burns midnight oil, painting his own storm with trembling persistence. He doesn't realize his muse is a ghost who still believes in broken hearts. Vincent walks among us, not as man, but as the ache that births beauty. Every masterpiece since carries a trace of his fever, his silence, his divine exhaustion. Historians call him a genius. Psychiatrists call him bipolar. Dreamers call him the savior of the sensitive. But truth needs no label. It bleeds quietly, long after applause fades into silence. In that silence, Vincent lives, breathing between the strokes, waiting between the stars. He painted not to be remembered, but because forgetting would have killed him sooner. When Starry Night was first displayed, they said it looked unstable, frantic, out of control. Now they call it hope incarnate, proof that chaos can birth something infinitely tender. Every swirl, every trembling motion mirrors the storm of a man who refused to surrender. And though his sadness remains, so does his courage, eternal, incandescent, unbroken by death. In the digital age, his face is everywhere. T-shirts, posters, filters, endless reproductions. Yet behind each reproduction, a deeper silence hums, the echo of what was truly lost. We love his art because we fear his truth, that beauty demands unbearable sacrifice. He taught us that light is nothing without darkness, and love means choosing to stay. When modern artists sign their names beneath their pain, they're continuing his unfinished prayer. When someone feels unworthy, unwanted, unloved, his story rises like a quiet reassurance. He whispers, "You are not broken. You are becoming art, and hearts begin to heal. He didn't save himself, but he saved everyone who ever felt too much to survive. In the final gallery room, sunflowers gleam under careful light, each petal glowing like redemption. Tourists take photos, unaware they're capturing someone's eternal heartbeat disguised as yellow light. But one woman lingers, hands trembling, eyes wet. She sees the man behind the color. She whispers, "Thank you for feeling everything I was too afraid to." The room exhales softly. He was not the madman the world imagined. He was the mirror it feared to face. And through every generation, that mirror reflects both warning and hope in trembling gold. His story reminds us that pain does not end us. It defines what endures beyond us. The sadness did last forever, but so did the love, the art, the light. And so his name travels, through lips, through brushes, through dreams, through centuries unending. Vincent van Gogh, the man who painted his pain and taught the world how to feel. He never found peace on earth, but he gifted it to millions he never met. And perhaps that is the truest art, to die unloved, yet leave behind love for all. I once believed my sadness was a curse. Now I see it was my calling. From the other side of silence, I watch colors bloom where my tears once fell. The same fields that buried me now shine with gold, as if forgiving my despair. Death didn't take me. It translated me, from suffering into light, from color into soul. The sky remembers every stroke I painted in fever, every cry hidden behind yellow suns. Each star above whispers the same word I once feared: understood. Finally, I understood. No more doctors, no more ridicule, no more cold nights trembling in forgotten asylum walls. Now, my mind is free, not from madness, but from the loneliness of being unseen. I see Theo again sometimes, standing beside me in the wind, smiling softly without words. He doesn't carry my paintings anymore. He carries peace, and that's enough for both of us. Even eternity feels small beside the love of a brother who never stopped believing. We talk about the days we lost, and the beauty we somehow saved through pain. I ask him if people still cry when they see Starry Night, and he nods. He says, "They cry, Vincent, but not from sadness, from recognizing themselves in your storm." That's all I ever wanted, not fame, not praise, only to be felt. And now, across centuries, strangers whisper my name with reverence, not pity. That is enough. The world finally understands that madness was never my enemy. Indifference was. I wasn't painting to impress. I was painting to survive one more night of silence. They called it insanity. I called it prayer, and heaven finally answered through color. The angels here laugh softly, saying they've never seen anyone worship light the way I did. They tell me that every artist who paints in pain sends a fragment of my soul, that each trembling brushstroke from the lonely adds another star to the infinite sky. I look down, and yes, the earth now glows brighter than it ever did before. Pain still exists there, but so does the courage to turn it into something sacred. In museums, I watch children look up at my work and whisper, "He must have felt this." Their tiny hands reach toward the painting, as if to touch the pulse behind the color. That's how heaven feels, to be reached for, even by those who've never met you. The sadness still exists, but it no longer destroys. It teaches, it softens, it saves. Sometimes I visit the old asylum. The walls now faded, the garden grown wild again. I hear echoes of my laughter there, soft and brittle like sunlight through broken glass. The nurses are gone, the whispers gone, but the wind still hums through my old window. And through that window I still see Starry Night, endless, swirling, merciful, alive. I realize now I never painted the stars as they were, but as I hoped. I didn't paint the sky I saw. I painted the heaven I needed to believe in. Every stroke was not an escape. It was a map leading me back to myself. And when I finally arrived, I found peace waiting with a palette full of forgiveness. People ask why I ended my life when I'd already created such eternal light. But you see, I didn't end it. I simply crossed into the painting I couldn't finish. I live there now, in every sunrise, in every trembling heart that dares to dream again. I became what I loved most: color, infinite, unbroken, forever reaching for the light. Theo walks with me through fields that never end, our footsteps soft upon golden wheat. The crows no longer circle. They fly ahead, guiding us toward the horizon without fear. We don't speak much anymore. We don't need to. Every breeze carries the words we lost. And in that stillness I understand. The sadness didn't last forever. The beauty did. Down below, someone reads my letter aloud. The sadness will last forever, they repeat, crying. But they don't realize I smile each time those words echo through time-assess fragile corridors. Because those words were never despair. They were prophecies, fulfilled by every soul who still feels. My sadness became everyone's empathy. And empathy, my friends, is how the world heals. Now, I am not alone. I am every trembling artist painting beneath an unforgiving sky. I am every poet crying quietly between verses, every soul daring to still believe in love. The universe hums with the same vibration I once felt beneath my trembling hands. And through that hum, I know I was never broken. I was simply overflowing. If I could speak to the living, I'd tell them this softly through the starlit wind. Do not fear your sadness. It is your proof that you are still beautifully human. Let it burn you gently. Let it teach you the colors hidden inside your pain. You were not made to be perfect. You were made to feel, and that is divine. And when you look at the sky, know this: I am there, still painting, still alive. Each star is a heartbeat I refuse to let die, a promise I still keep. Every brushstroke you make, every tear you transform, keeps me alive in the human story. So paint, write, love, break, heal. And remember, sadness only ends when love begins again. The sun rises over Arles, warm, forgiving, almost laughing, as if greeting an old friend. The world is noisy again, loud with life, color, chaos, and impossible tenderness. And from somewhere beyond that golden horizon, a whisper lingers, light as wind, heavy as memory. Tell them, Theo. Tell them I was never mad, only in love with everything. And then silence. Not the silence of death, but the silence of peace finally found. The sky exhales, the wheat fields breathe, the colors rest. The soul of Vincent van Gogh sleeps easily. Not beneath the earth, but above it, among the stars he once called home, forever painting, forever feeling, forever reminding the world that beauty is born from sorrow.